Hi students, this is Mrs. Cotter, and I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about Chapter 8 in your text for the guidance class. It's such an important chapter for us to have a little conversation about. It is centering on the idea of talking to students as individuals, taking a look at beyond their behavior. And one of the things that we talk about with young children in probably all of the classes that you've had or are having is their ability to communicate and their ability to not be able to communicate using words and language in a formal system. And of course, one of the most difficult things to talk about is emotions and feelings and how a person feels or what's having an influence on them that day, that week, that month, that year. And of course, little children have those same difficulties and even to a bigger degree. In Chapter 8, your author does just an excellent job of talking about how to talk about young children and really listening. One of the mantras that I've come up with and used for a very long time in my teaching in the classroom and also teaching teachers is the idea of shut up and wait. And I know that's a little bit coarse to be saying to people, but it does make people think a little bit about the idea that we just need to do more listening and understand the community in which the children are coming from. So I would like to just say to you, you need to know your community. Be you from a farming community, such as is local, be you from an inner city community, be you from any community. You need to know your community. You need to know the social problems, that your community is facing. You need to know what's high on the list of parents' concerns. You need to know all of these things because that influences how the children come into your classroom. You may come from a community that has a large religious population. You need to know that community too. It doesn't mean that it's a cult. It doesn't mean it's a sect. It just means that it is a way of life. And it means that we have to understand where the children are coming from. I also would like to talk to you just a second or two about mandatory reporting. He gives a little bit of time in our chapter this week about mandating reporting. If you are a professional working in the field of child development, early education, early care, you are a mandated reporter. And fortunately, I've only had a few times in my long career that I've had to do any mandating reporting or have helped teachers do the mandating reporting. No one likes to do it. No one wants to throw blame. No one wants to have families investigated. No one wants it to come back on themselves, depending on how families feel about it. But here's the thing. You don't have a choice. If there is a child reporting things that are out of the ordinary to the extreme, things that talk about violence or domestic violence or abuse, your job is not to investigate. And the people who train us from Division of Services for Children definitely say that to us. That's really not our job to investigate. Our job is to listen and then report. I have always said to the teachers that I've worked with or therapists that I am happy to sit with them as they do the reporting. I think it is something that just helps everybody know what's going on. The teacher then, if they get confronted, they always have someone in their corner. Should a parent come in and say, are you the one who reported me and why did you do this and things like that. But it has to be the person who the child spoke to. There's just no ifs, ands, and buts about it. You cannot be a secondary person. You have to be the person. You make that phone call and they will kind of lead you through what it is that you need to tell them. You very much must stick to the facts. It's not about how you feel. It's not about your judgment. It is the child came to me and said, or the child came in and I saw. Because should you ever get to the point where you have to do a statement or you unfortunately might have to testify or something, then you want to be sure that you have stuck straight to the facts and not made any kind of interpretation really at that point. I would really encourage you that wherever you're working, you know their policy. Some places have the administrator report it. I've always felt that it always comes back to whoever the child talked to, so it really needs to be that person. But you need to know it. You need not to be afraid of it, because really we are in child protection and we want to protect children as much as we can. So just being sure that you are following those policies and procedures, and honestly, that you don't hesitate too long, because it is the welfare of the child that we are concerned about. Then going on, or back to, I suppose, the idea of listening beyond behavior. There is almost always a reason for behavior. I thought that the anecdotes that were in the chapter were really quite well written and pretty real, with the fact that people are faced with, what do I do now? Or why is this child acting this way? It's out of the usual. They've come in since a visit to uncle, aunt, grandparent, wherever. They've been home on break. This just isn't the child. And so our first concern is the child and being sure that they are safe, but also trying to see past the surface behavior. I worked in probably the world's smallest residential school. We had 6 students. It was on a farm, and it was for adolescents with mental illness and who were also deaf. So I had quite a large staff of people who were deaf, who were excellent people because they really could communicate so well with the students that we had. But many of our staff meetings were about seeing underneath the surface behavior, kind of like what a lot of people say, peeling the onion. What's this layer telling you? What's this layer? And I kept telling them all the time to look deeper. It wasn't that they wanted to or felt good about or anything about punching or kicking or throwing a chair. It was just their way of trying to express something much deeper. And I found that after several years of working with my deaf staff, that they began to understand, well, this is what they're showing, but this is not what they're meaning. So for little kids, it's even more complex. Simple, it just is what it is, to be able to take a child and give them the feeling that in school or at childcare, they are always accepted and belong. And if you think back on a couple of our other chapters, thinking of the belonging, the attachment, those are such basic needs of every human being, that if a child feels that with you or one of your staff members, but certainly at your environment, then they're more willing to talk to you about what's happening. Sometimes you do have to shut up and listen, and not just listen to exactly what they're saying, but how and what manner it's coming across. Taking a look at their play in the kitchen. Is somebody slamming things down? Is someone threatening someone with a play skillet? All of those things have meaning. And I also would encourage you to be sure that you are documenting all of these areas. So because this was such an important area, the author does just an excellent job of taking us through strategies on how to communicate, how to encourage communication, those kinds of things. That was great, but I just wanted to have a few minutes to talk to you about such an enormous area of great need and some of the things that we can do as teachers and caregivers. Thanks for listening.